Burke.
Okay, good evening, fellow Democrats. Thanks so much for this opportunity to speak to you. I'll be brief. I am Burke Strunsky. I'm currently a Superior Court judge running for Riverside County District Attorney in the June election. And this would be the first Democratic DA in the county in recent history, and likely the only elected Democrat in the county. That's countywide, excuse me. I am a lifelong Democrat and the only Democrat right now in this race. The incumbent Mike Hestron, as many of you know, is a conservative Republican. So only in this race for about a month, I am endorsed by Congressman Mark Takano, Assembly Members Cervantes and Medina, Mayor Tim Sheridan, who I know is on the Zoom call. Thank you. IE United and the Inland Empire Labor Council, as well as many other Democratic leaders in the county. We know that Mr. Hestron's very regressive criminal justice policies of the last 8 years have failed, and great injustices are happening every day in every courtroom in the county, and we're becoming less safe. These burdens are most heavily falling on communities that are already marginalized. My background is I served as a prosecutor for 15 years, many years in the homicide unit, as well as the unit prosecuting crimes against children. I was a judge for the last 5 years, where I was elected to a 6-year term, countywide term. As a judge, I've had a front row seat to this great injustice, the unfairness, the ineffectiveness of this district attorney's office. In conclusion, I think Riverside County needs a district attorney who not only prioritizes public safety, but who also understands that the scales of justice balance only when criminal cases are handled with compassion, clear-eyed realism, fairness, and respect for the human dignity of every victim and every defendant. And that's who I am. You can get more information on my website at strunsky.com. That's STRUNSKY.com. Thank you so much for letting me speak. And I don't know if there's questions, but I'm certainly here for anything.
Yeah, let's take a couple of questions. If anyone has a question for Burke. I can't see. Let's see. Does anyone have a question? Oh, I see. Greg Tortoretti. You're muted.
Attorney has a stockpile. Whoop, hang on. Has a stockpile of military weapons. Would you be donating those back to the maybe back to the Ukrainians if you get in a position to do so?
Yeah, I think the Ukrainians are jealous of Hestron's stockpile of weapons. I don't know what he's using them for. I am as surprised as probably many of you are. I can't imagine a district attorney's responsibility needing armored vehicles and that kind of weaponry unless I see a purpose that goes beyond anything I've seen so far. Absolutely. First of all, we're barely able to fund the office and get enough deputy district attorneys to man the courtroom. So the idea that we're spending all this money on military hardware is really confounding, and I think we're going to have to explore that more. But the bottom line is, I can't see a purpose for it, and it's going to go back unless I find one.
Thank you.
I have a question. Fiscally, what has Hestron done to that office over his tenure?
Great question. Thank you. So just in the 8 years that Mike Hestron has been in office, or 7+ years, his budget has increased 52%. You heard me right, 52%. It went from 104 million to about 160+ million. And that's just in that period of time. But here's what's really concerning is we also know that he's actually doing less for that huge increase in budget. When we look at the Judicial Council statistics, that's the court statistics, which kind of give us an idea of the main indicators of productivity. All of them are down. Cases are down, trials are down, dispositions are down, yet our budget is exploding and the crime rate is exploding. 5 out of the last 6 years, the homicide rate has gone up double-digit percentages here in Riverside County, despite his overly punitive justice philosophy. And it's not working. It's ineffective on all levels, fiscally, ethically, and justice-wise. and people are getting hurt, and members of his office are leaving in droves. A third of the deputy district attorneys have left just since he was elected. So we get a sense of an office that is really in turmoil, and it's causing great damage to the criminal justice system.
Ronald Prentice.
Yeah, my question is, does the Riverside County DA have any supervisory powers over the county sheriff?
That's a fantastic question. And yes, the bottom line is the district attorney and not the sheriff is the chief law enforcement officer of the county, and the only local civilian oversight of the police department. And maybe at the risk of being a little hyperbolic, if we don't have civilian oversight, we have a police state. So yes, and the problem that we have now, and I'm sure many of you know this, is both Sheriff Bianco and Mike Hestron are funded through the same source. In other words, contributions from police unions, mostly from the sheriff's union. So they're tied together in a way that makes it a really concerning conflict of interest. Because if Mike Hestron is overseeing police misconduct and the union, the police union, is defending the officers that are accused of police misconduct, and both the sheriff and Mike Hestron are funded by the same law enforcement contributions, both of which make up the majority of their donations, that is a deeply concerning conflict of interest. And it's why we see the Attorney General having to step in and handle cases. So the answer to your question is yes, and we need real oversight. We need a district attorney that is not going to be called bot when he makes these decisions. And we need to get back the confidence of the community.
Okay, Jimmy Jackson.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to get a chance to meet you. I believe I met you previously before when I was first admitted to the civil grand jury. I had an opportunity to meet you then, if I recall correctly. But I have a question for you. What is your feelings and standing pertaining to an oversight committee independent of the DA office as well as the sheriff department for police shootings?
Great question. And independence is important, but it's also important that we have professionals that are trained in these areas to handle these types of cases. The first thing we need to do is create a separation between police and prosecutors. And we need to say that the people that investigate the cases are not employed by the same law enforcement agency that the accused officer or the officers being investigated is part of. And that requires a district attorney to say unequivocally, I am not going to take any contributions from law enforcement unions. And there's legislation in Sacramento that is going to require, it's already passed the state Senate, that's going to require prosecutors who take money from police unions to recuse themselves. And that, I believe, will create a stark separation between police and prosecutors that will give it the independence. So all of the investigators, all of the prosecutors are separate and unbiased, and they have the ability to make decisions that will be respected by the communities. And the other thing I'm vowing to do is every time I make the decision as the DA not to file a case against a police officer who was involved in an incident that led to the death of a civilian, I'm going to hold a town hall meeting and answer every question that I legally can answer. Obviously, there are going to be some questions I won't be able to answer, but I'm going to stand there and answer every question so that the community knows very directly why I did not file that case. And I think that's going to create the level of transparency and unbiased evaluation that we're looking for.
Okay, by the same token, if I may, Madam Chair, without taking up too much time, by the same token, what you just proposed is a similar proposal I've heard in the past. Why not take in consideration you can have investigative agents coming from the DA's office and the sheriff department advising the independent committee as to what they discover and allow the committee to make the decision, vice yourself or the sheriff coming in and making the decision instead? Wouldn't that be more transparency?
Well, I think it's certainly important to have independent people in there, but at the end of the day, as the chief law enforcement officer of the county, it's a decision that I have to personally make. That's what I'll be elected to make. So I can't merely forego that responsibility, but I think I can create independence both in myself and independence in the people that investigate. The people that are investigating these cases should not be part of any law enforcement union or agency that the officer who is being accused of the misconduct is part of. So I think we can create some separation. Whether that means we create a whole nother entity that makes these decisions, I think is yet to be seen.
Thank you.
Last question is from Ernie Meth. Ernie, you're muted.
I'm muting myself. Hi there. And thanks for taking the question. My question, can you flesh out, can you give an example of a conflict of interest that Hestron and Bianco have, something that makes it really tangible for people?
Well, right. So let's say there's a shooting by a law enforcement officer. Now, the sheriff's department is involved in the investigation, as well as.
Do you have a specific one that you can?
Oh, a specific case? Well, I can't talk about specific case. I'm still a sitting judge. So I won't be able to talk about. I was given a hypothetical. So you're asking for an actual case. I won't be able to talk about that because until this election is over, I'm still a sitting judge, although I'm on leave of absence. So
gotcha. I'm just trying, to make the flavor of it more real for all of us.
Right. Just generally, it's the sheriff's department. Chad Bianco is the head of the sheriff's department, and that sheriff's department often is involved in officer-involved shootings. Now, the relationship between, as I talked about, Bianco and Hestron is concerning because Hestron is supposed to be the unbiased, non-conflicted, non-compromised entity, and he's not. And I think that's where we lack civilian oversight in this county of police officers.
Could you do it in terms of somebody before Hestron, in case that I'm just okay. Enough is
Well, I mean, I can give a general example of a case where the attorney general has determined that they needed to come in, and that's the Costco shooting. We saw that the attorney general decided that it needed to prosecute a case that Mr. Hestron had sent to the grand jury, again, that was a law enforcement officer, and Hestron's decision to send to the grand jury and ultimately not file, the attorney general disagreed with that and filed charges. The attorney general also has jurisdiction in officer-involved shooting cases.
okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge Strunsky.
Thank you.
For coming here. Thank you.
Thank you all.